Banks actually don't want your money unless they know where it's coming from. Some amount of money hit our account and we got completely unbanked. It was a small amount. Private accounts, business accounts, savings accounts, checkings accounts. 2 banks completely ejected from the system up until this day. It's now 3 months in. No communication. You can't pay for groceries. You can't pay your bills. Everything's blocked. You have to activate friends and family to provide for you. I'm all out Fiat, all in Bitcoin. That's one thing that hits you so hard. The control that they have over you. You're thirsty, you can't stop by the side of the road to grab a drink at the gas station because your card's not working. We'll survive, but I think first it's going to get harder before it gets easier. Bitcoin will keep going up. You'll have to keep improving your security. With great power comes great responsibility. That's what Bitcoin is giving us. Freedom and responsibility. We never in history had the amount of freedom that we can have on a Bitcoin standard.
You had a bad experience with a Fiat bank that kind of threw you out, from what I was understanding. How was that?
Yeah. So the background there is Bitsaga is accepting Bitcoin as payment for hardware and services. The suppliers, they don't accept Bitcoin yet, right? They still need to be orange pilled, and I'm working on that. But until that day, we have to pay them with fiat, and I have to sell Bitcoin in order to pay them. And when selling Bitcoin peer-to-peer, to have a little premium on top of it and not lose even more margins by the KYC exchanges, because if you sell through the big exchanges like a good citizen would, they gnaw off fees, and that's just hurting business. So that's why we choose to go to peer-to-peer, and banks don't like that, because then you can receive money that they don't know where it's coming from. And banks actually don't want your money unless they know where it's coming from. And with all the new regulations hitting, that's becoming more and more clear, especially in EU. I mean, it's monstrous right now. The EU travel rule and what else has been activated, Mike, now in 2025, it's ridiculous. And so they're really scared. And that's, I guess, the backstory there, that some amount of money hit our account and we got completely unbanked. It was a small amount.
But if you have peer-to-peer selling, you got from an individual money, right? Because the individual
Correct,
selling,
directly.
he got Bitcoin and he got I also sometimes get money from like a new account that I never got money from. Like how did they know? Like, what was them bothering with that transaction? Was it that big? Was it unusual big or something like that?
Definitely not. So here's the thing. I have no idea what triggered it. They have zero communication as to why they did what they did. This is an assumption of me. And one specific phone call to customer support by one bank mentioned it was a 600 euro transaction. A 600 euro transaction? Peer-to-peer sell? Are you kidding me? One of many. Just that was the way things were done. And suddenly, perhaps some dirty money by some individual who was linked to, I don't know, drugs, child porn, whatever they don't like. Or really, that's can be qualified as dirty money, right? And that's what I'm assuming, that dirty money hit our account, and private accounts, business accounts, savings accounts, checkings accounts, 2 banks completely ejected from the system. No prior message, no warning, no nothing. Not just blocking the transaction, completely unbanking. Locked all my money away, one bank, KBC, up until this day. That's now 3 months in. Completely unbanked. My money's locked. No communication. An investigation is ongoing. That's it. And I just keep bothering them, but nothing moves. It's
Two
wild. It's wild.
two different banks that got you kicked out.
Two different banks at the same time. It was coordinated, 100%.
And that's the whole thing, because people are like, oh, like you just got kicked out of one bank. It's like, no, like the Fiat system is one thing, and it's one big bank. All of this, they have different logos, they have different management teams, but they are way more coordinated as we think. They have the same blacklists, they have the same things going on. So like you kind of got kicked out of the whole Fiat system. What did you do? Did you open a new bank account with someone else, or like did you move to Bitcoin?
Open new bank accounts, indeed. Well, first I have to say, you can describe it and talk about it, but until that happens to you, you don't really realize what it is, because you can't pay for groceries. You can't pay your bills. Everything's blocked. You have to activate friends and family to provide for you in your financial requirements. Because if you have two banks and these two banks have locked your money down, you got no money, no fiat money. And of course, I'm all out fiat, all in Bitcoin, but that doesn't pay the bills. So that's one thing that hits you so hard. The control that they have over you, it really is absolute. You're thirsty, you can't stop by the side of the road to grab a drink at the gas station because your card's not working. Gas stations don't accept Bitcoin. So it really is all encompassing. And then you open new bank accounts. Of course, there's bank accounts that are friendlier. Some banks are notoriously wary of these things. Revolut, Biobank. I mean, there's a lot of digital versions now, right? And that has been working. And now Bitsaga goes through KYC exchanges to sell Bitcoin, as a good citizen does, with full identification. Nothing out of the ordinary. But yeah, we got smacked down pretty hard there. And BTC Pay server, self-custody, it's up and running. You can accept Bitcoin, but the reality is that a lot of clients and just doing business, it's hybrid. It's Bitcoin and fiat. We can't, at least I can't, not on a personal level and not on a business level, shift to Bitcoin completely. It's not viable at this stage yet. If you're a digital nomad, perhaps you pay your credit card debt at the end of the month by Bitcoin. Some guys are doing it, but as a business, it's just not yet viable.
Yeah, I mean, I also recently looked into this topic actually because I'm running into a whole different set of problems. I get my income in Bitcoin is growing and growing. And income in fiat is kind of stable. So at some point I'm running into this problem of like having to pay or sell my Bitcoin or pay something with Bitcoin. So I'm a Bitcoin podcaster. I will get a new employee. He will accept getting paid in Bitcoin, which is amazing. But still, this is kind of the same thing. Like if I send Bitcoin to someone else or sell Bitcoin, if you want to be a good citizen, that's the same thing. Like you have to pay taxes on that. Like you have to pay capital gains taxes on that. So I looked at a lot of different options, and the thing is like you have two options. You can sell your Bitcoin, spend your Bitcoin, whatever, or you can borrow against your Bitcoin. Both I don't really like because there are capital gains tax involved and documentation and all the things that you have to do. And the other thing is like, then I have to borrow against my Bitcoin. I have to care for the credit thing. I have to see like, okay, is my Bitcoin now locked up somewhere? Do they have to get the Bitcoin? How can I keep the control of it? So I don't want to have like, I don't want to get $20,000, but lose a whole Bitcoin for that. Like there's a lot of worries around that topic, or like, How do you go about that? If you have now, with Bitsaga, you accept Bitcoin payments, you just go through a KYC exchange, you sell it, and that's how you do it. Is that kind of the best way to do it?
That's the flow currently, indeed. Borrowing against your Bitcoin, previous experiences, and I'm talking about the market as a whole here, winking to platforms like BlockFi and others, should have gotten most people wary of these things, right? Because you're giving up your keys. There are solutions out there with discrete log contracts, DLCs, on chain to maintain custody and borrow against it. But these solutions, as far as I understand, aren't ready yet for mass use. If you're like Pioneer, you want to try out, I mean, they might not call it beta software. You want to try out beta software, sure, but as a viable way of living, at least for me, or as a business, borrowing, perhaps down the road, I do like the principle of it, of not having to sell it, and that's how high net worths often do it. You collateralize assets and then you borrow against it. So the principle is really strong there, that you can maintain that what is most valuable to you, whether that being your company stock or your Bitcoin. But I'm afraid, I mean, there's great solutions out there, but today it needs a lot of ironing out to make it real smooth user experience. I'm such a user experience fetishist. If it doesn't have one button that solves the problem I'm here to solve, then I'm already, I mean, yeah, we have a lot of backend devs in Bitcoin, it seems, and UX is really an area to improve, I feel, both on the hardware and the software layer, I feel. So yeah, that's how we do it right now. We sell. We have to, because it's just clients paying in Bitcoin and suppliers if it's for hardware, right? The main branch of the business now is also consultancy, helping people with their Bitcoin security. And that doesn't always have to be sold. But yeah, like you said, there's two ways here. And for now, the smoothest seems to be with pain in the heart to sell.
But you also have capital gains tax probably on those Bitcoin that you have to pay.
That depends on how your business is structured. It still depends, but there might be, because in Belgium it's a little bit of a one-off kit there, but there's regulations, of course, knocking on the door that is going to change that. So for now, not always, and that's various fiscal tax legislation, mumbo jumbo stuff, but that's probably coming.
Interesting, yeah. One thing you also mentioned, which is super interesting, is P2P platforms. You stopped using them now. Do you think they can or will survive in the EU? It's like there's a lot of talk of with all the KYC requirements, especially in the EU. I mean, there's like Vexel, there's Beach Bitcoin, there are multiple platforms that do that. Do you think they can or will survive this EU thing?
Yes, so it's important to maintain the broader scope here, right? This thing is built to withstand these things. So we are suffering from these horrendous regulations. Many companies, startups, heck, BitSaga has software that cannot be deployed because of regulations. So definitely various peer-to-peer platforms are suffering from adoption because of regulations. So in some sense, that's already true, but they most certainly will survive. You can, on a protocol level, if you look at things like BISC, it's a separate network with liquidity. You can't bring that down. We will suffer immensely, and we might, in the peer-to-peer, might get pushed into a dark criminal corner. But in the end, and it does seem to be getting worse, right? The regulations. For now, there's also starting to be a pushback of EU accelerationism that is, and even voices within the EU like Mario Draghi, Super Mario, calling for simplification, deregulation. We need to allow for innovation within our EU to be able to compete with USA and China. So the pendulum perhaps hasn't started swinging back, but at least is slowing down. And I guess it's a little bit not going to go there. I think we'll survive, definitely. But I think first it's going to get harder before it gets easier, in the EU at least.
Interesting. For spending, did you also look at cards like what's it called, bit refill cards and stuff like that, where you can basically tap into your Bitcoin savings and directly spend it when you have the credit card?
Yeah, bit refill is awesome. Once you discover it, and there's many shops, platforms that you can buy gift cards, right? Gift cards can be a beautiful unlinking of losing a chain of your identity. On Biscuit's also a payment method, and it's a beautiful one that can be truly anonymous. So that being said, Bitrefill, I think it's way underutilized. Probably it's a very big platform, but if normies or new people into Bitcoin would realize the not just the store of value aspect, right? Because the value goes up, but also the medium of exchange aspect. To what extent it is very viable today because of platforms like Bitrefill. I mean, it's beautiful, especially if you use Lightning, right? You just scan a QR code, boom, you got your code. Got to wait for an on-chain transaction. Bitrefill is awesome. It's viable on an individual level, right? As a business, less so still, but especially on an individual level, it's a beautiful platform.
Yeah, and they also have a card now with like a credit card where you can pay. If I heard, I've not tested it. I'm just like, because I'm thinking of like, okay, if I have the Bitcoin, maybe I want to directly spend it when I have it. Like having the longest period of time to have Bitcoin is the best case for me. If you have it on the normal bank account, I have to sell it and then use it on the bank account. But if I can keep it in a Bitcoin account and have a card connected to that, and while I'm paying, maybe I just move it to Lightning. Like maybe that's the solution of like moving like 1,000 euros at a time to a Lightning setup. And then I tap it and it directly converts the Lightning into cash, and while tapping, you're paying that. That would be maybe a perfect solution of while we still have that fiat system. You have basically a Bitcoin card, which there's a Lightning wallet in there, and you just tap and pay, and this is automatic. That would be kind of a cool thing. Is that how Bitrefill card works? Do you know that, by the way?
I don't know if Bitrefill card works that way, but I do know that the bring-in card, which is coming out in a couple of days, it should. Signed up for the beta batch of the first 50 cards, should have already arrived. Anxiously waiting for them to actually arrive. And how I've understood it is that you can top up by Lightning and then use that card to pay with fiat anywhere. So that's getting pretty close to what you're describing. And I might be wrong that it might already be that they are going to automatically convert your Bitcoin holdings into fiat the moment that you pay. If it's not already there in the current beta launch, it is, I would hope, probably coming. That's very exciting. Bringin, Bringin, is, really beautifully bridging, no pun intended, or actually, yeah, that gap between fiat and Bitcoin, and then the card for daily usage, that medium of exchange, right? That would be beautiful, as you described. Exactly.
I
And
had
as soon
him
as
on the podcast. Yeah.
yeah, and as soon as the card arrives in my hand, I'm looking at, yeah. For now, it's virtual debit cards, but the physical one should actually be arriving anytime soon. So I'm very anxious to make a little video demo of Lightning top up paying with fiat, and then go unbank this.
I
Exciting
love
what they're
that.
doing.
I love that. Yeah, and that's what the services, and I think there are many more. I also heard from Ledger to N26. Nice. N26 is the bank I use in my fiat world. It's I think in Austria the best fiat bank you can have. But yeah, like coming closer to the state where you are unbanked and you can use Bitcoin in a normal way. This is then the best case for me. Like that should be the best thing that could happen to us. Of like, we have Bitcoin, we can use it, and we can use Bitcoin and Bitcoin companies also spend our fiat, and we don't have to go to those fiat institutions. We can use Bitcoin institutions to use fiat in the meantime while we're waiting for the Bitcoin standard to evolve and unfold in front of our eyes.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. The removing friction, that is right, because that's already possible, but there's just steps in between. And like you were describing, you really want it to be seamless, frictionless. Hold Bitcoin and be able to spend fiat. I think we're really close. If Brigham hasn't already done that, I think they are very close. Paying invoices with Bitcoin directly, I think Strike and Bull Bitcoin, probably others, are already facilitating this. So we're inching closer very fast. It's beautiful. Also, even within the EU, even given all the horrendous regulations, we're getting there. To be able to get unbanked and just sail on without too much hassle. It's been a huge hassle, but probably, maybe let's hope in a couple, within 2 or 3 years, getting unbanked won't be as painful anymore, and we'll just be more able to put up a middle finger and not comply.
That's exactly what I'm looking for. But yeah, let's move to a topic which is probably even more important than how to spend Bitcoin, is how to secure Bitcoin. Like that's the most important topic, I feel like, in Bitcoin, and it's the most overlooked topic. It's really fascinating how the most important topic is not seemingly the most important. Like this is a no-brainer to, like, if you have Bitcoin, how to keep them should be the first question, and should be studied probably a little bit more than why Bitcoin. We talked about, like, you're making now the how Bitcoin, securing Bitcoin part, but everyone knows about the why Bitcoin, like the Bitcoin standard, and like 2,000 other books that basically describe the same thing. And you're now trying to write the Bitcoin Bible for how to secure Bitcoin. What are the cornerstones that you're trying to describe there?
So indeed, it is a rather overlooked subject, but it's also a very sensitive subject. And a lot of things within Bitcoin are sensitive because maximalists tend to hold strong opinions. But even within Bitcoin, there's a lot of tribalism with regards to security, and probably confirmation bias. When you hold your Bitcoin on a hardware wallet and other people are dunking on said hardware wallet, you tend to be easily to feel attacked also, because it's your precious money that is on there, and that some security remark, whether that's critical or not, it affects your holdings. So people are very, it's a sensitive subject. There's a lot of opinions, and people valuing other things. Some people value air gaps, Some people don't really care if it's over USB. And there's a lot of different profiles, and there's a lot of different hardware and software, and there's a good fit for everyone, right? But the beautiful thing is that because Bitcoin cryptography, it's based on mathematics and physics and energy, there are objective truths. Simple example, 24 words are more secure than 12 words. 12 words are enough in any case, I believe. That would be my opinion here. Mathematically, objectively speaking, 24 words are more secure. And these are the things that can lead us and not get clouded by opinions and people holding a significant amount of money in a specific hardware wallet or in a specific security scheme, passphrase, Shamir's, Multisig, because I've been dubbed a Multisig maxi, and I wear that badge proudly. But you can notice people being protective of certain ways, and yeah, the book that is being written, Securing Bitcoin, that is indeed the angle, the how, and not just the basics of getting it off an exchange, right? Because we have been hammering on that mantra. I mean, Antonopoulos has for years, and we still need to keep hammering on that mantra. But buying a hardware wallet, getting your Bitcoin off an exchange in self-custody, backing it up on paper or steel, that's just the first step. I mean, if it's on an exchange, you don't really hold any Bitcoin, right? It's a meme, but it's very true. So getting it onto a hardware wallet, that's your first step. Okay, what's next? Because whenever you start it, or if you have significant asset and you're starting out with 6 or more digits, or if you're starting out with a small amount, I mean, the growth rate of Bitcoin, the value growth is very significant here. At some point, you're going to be uncomfortable with the value you're holding in just a hardware wallet. And you're going to realize, okay, I can make a mistake here, $5 range. I'm getting uncomfortable because the value of your Bitcoin is increasing, and or you've started out with a significant amount. I talk to investors who start out, dip their toes, and that's 6 digits. And perhaps a hardware wallet in the classical sense isn't the best fit there. And then we're looking at the next steps, right? Passphrase, because you want to eliminate your single point of failure. One hardware wallet, you can back up your seed in multiple places, but that also increases attack vectors. Every backup is an attack vector. So you maintain your single point of failure. So introducing a passphrase, now you need 2 elements and you're protected from a $5 wrench attack. If depending on how you implement it, a passphrase is another single point of failure. If you only have one, if you're only keeping it in your brain, or you only have one copy. So that depends on the implementation. And then there's Shamir secret sharing, splitting up the seed in different parts that you need any 2 of 3 parts. And then, of course, you quickly look into multisig. And that really is the word that scares a lot of people, because, yeah, there's a huge amount of bias here. And I feel the bias is from previous years where doing multisig was admittedly obnoxiously complex. Absolutely. But on the protocol level, on the hardware level, and on the software level, things have changed so significantly. Multisig really is more approachable. And indeed, that tweet really blew up. That was really interesting to see people resonating with. Okay, and that's just an arbitrary number, right? I think I'll settle on 21 levels of Bitcoin security just because. But I think this is a really good pointer.
So in the book, you're also going with the level system, and you're trying to get to 21 levels.
Well, This seems to be resonating a lot. I think the beautiful thing is evergreen principles, like an air gap. These things, they hold up. They are not inventions from Bitcoiners. These are validated approaches, methods from within the cybersecurity realm. So it's going to be a combination of led by evergreen principles, entropy, air gaps, inheritance planning, many vetted approaches that aren't invented by Bitcoiners and just thrown together, but boiling down to more specific things is very valuable, because you can talk about multisig all day and then they're like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really don't like my single point of failure passphrase. Yeah, that's fun. Shamirs. Okay, let's do multisig. And they really can be convinced rather. I mean, yeah, Bitsaga doesn't convince. We're just here to help, but it seems to become way more popular, and the levels you can find where you are and then think about, okay, I want to upgrade. I don't want to jump straight into a full cold 3 of 5 multisig, because that can be dangerous. You might introduce mistakes. But okay, I might look at a second device, and that's, I think, the value of these levels, that you can start to you can prepare yourself for the next step and just ease into it. Build a wallet like that, a hybrid 2 or 3 multisig with one hotkey, and not immediately move all your funds there. And then perhaps when you have some more funds in there, you can create a new wallet, a 3 or 5 multisig, and just play around with it and get comfortable and upgrade in that way. So I do think the levels are very valuable, because it's very specific and people want specifics. Okay, you can talk about evergreen principles all day, but which button do I press? Yes, I want it. Give me the security.
It's interesting for me. Like you start with multisig on level 9, so everything beforehand is single sig, if I see that correctly.
Correct. So single sig passphrase, and then level 8, yeah, single. It's a single sig, but it's already decentralized. And actually, level 6 is already decentralized. And decentralization here is one of these evergreen principles again, right? I believe that is the most powerful aspect of Bitcoin. Not just the security, the decentralization. We can have a super secure system if it's not decentralized. If you have a single point of failure, there's no point in having the security if you have one entity that can control everything. And that's what's achieved here, starting from level 8, that you can have a passphrase, and you have 2 components, and you can have 2 components in 2 different areas that you're geographically distributed, and you eliminate, in some sense, if you have multiple backups, the single point of failure. And then level 8, the Shamir secret sharing. I mean, it doesn't really matter about what number of level it has, right? Because in the final system, it'll be a different level. But what the beauty about Shamir secret sharing is that it is decentralized. You have one seed, you cut it into 3 or 5 or 7 pieces, and you need X amount of pieces to reconstruct. Same with multisig, but with multisig, you have decentralized control also. So those are the evergreen principles that we can see implemented on a very specific level, and be very approachable. I mean, a 2 or 3 multisig wallet with one hotkey in blue. I once made, when I didn't have X Premium again, you're limited to 200 characters. Creating a multisig wallet in one tweet, 2 images, 2 QR codes, one hotkey, go into blue. It's really easy. It's really not that difficult. That how people think. You just need to be aware of these principles, and output descriptor, of course. A lot of people, they're very scared of this horrible thing called an output descriptor. But yeah, It's beautiful that you can cut it up into pieces. You don't have to jump straight into the more advanced things, and you can take it gradually. Start with one. So you get it off an exchange, go a hardware wallet, grab an air-gapped one, make sure, take care of your backup, and take it from there. Upgrade step by step. Every cycle, like once every 4 years, when the value of your assets has increased significantly, and you should probably upgrade if you're not selling, then it would make sense to upgrade at least a couple of levels every cycle.
What is the Bitcoin amount where you say like you don't have any excuse, you have to have multisig, like you just have to get on a decent amount of multi-signature with like redundancies in there and stuff like that?
That's a very hard question because it's subjective. And approaching this, as I said, the most beautiful and durable way to do it is with these evergreen principles. And you can't put an objective number on it. I will answer your question. So that, but I just want to throw up this disclaimer of there is no truth here. I've worked with clients who are very uncomfortable with their setup that isn't all that much in fiat value, but it's their life savings, and they want to upgrade it into multisig way before 6 digits, way before. And it has become very viable for normies to do that. We can talk about how or how easy that gets. But I mean, to answer your question, I think 6 digits is, because it has become so approachable, viable. The first entry level, right? One hotkey on your phone, on Blue Wallet. It's so simple. Blue Wallet is such a beautiful piece of software. You got 2 buttons, send, receive, and then QR codes. Beautiful. 5 years ago, you had to Electrum do multisig. Horrible. And then if you wanted to do it air-gapped with SD cards, horrible. I pity the people who do air-gaps with SD cards. So that number has come down. The fiat value that you have to jump into multisig, because it has become so much more approachable. PSBTs on the protocol level have been in the protocol 2019. That's relatively new. It's younger than most Bitcoiners. Air-gapped hardware with cameras, that was another requirement to make it really approachable. Those are also very relatively new. And then the software that supports the PSBTs with scanning the QR codes, and you can just do multisig now by scanning QR codes. So that number used to be a lot higher, but I feel actually it's significantly way below 6 digits. But now we're getting very subjective here. This is my very personal opinion because I realize how approachable it is. Proper multisig is still hard. There's a lot of gotchas. But just like single sig, doing single sig, there's a lot of trust involved. Even doing it with dice. Did you verify on a second device, or did you really trust the vendor? There's a lot of gotchas. If you want to do it properly, it can get complex really easy. But starting 6 digits, think about multisig. Definitely.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there? And of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. And make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty. So like starting from currently 1 Bitcoin, you should definitely think about it.
Actually, yeah.
It's good. It's a good. I like the Bitcoin is at like a round number where you can easily calculate. Now it's like if you have also Satoshis, you can easily calculate that. Like if you have like a few Satoshis in your wallet and you want to pay like for a drink in like a restaurant where they take Bitcoin, it's like easier to calculate all the things. It is really cool. Interesting. What do you think about collaborative multisig with a company like Casa or Unchained or something like that?
I think these options are beautiful. It allows people to introduce decentralization in their setup, which again is that evergreen principle that we should really strive for, eliminate single points of failure. And these principles are what make it beautiful, I believe. But the beauty of Bitcoin is the self-custody, right? And to me, that's black or white. That's black and white. You need to be able to control it yourself. And it's not because you're using these services that you're not able to control it yourself. But if you're not, perhaps maybe it's not black and white. Yeah, I want to take that back. But the approach of Bitsaga here really is teach it how it's done in complete self-custody. That's the most beautiful implementation, the most free implementation that you hold full control. And then do collaborative custody within your family. Introduce your siblings, your parents. You have orange pilled your family by now, right? And they hold some Bitcoin. So do collaborative multisig with them. And that's what we often do also with clients. It's often individuals, but also often it's multiple people of families. And one key is going to be here and one key is going to be there. And it's geographically distributed and not one person can run with it. And yeah, I feel that's the more beautiful implementation of that. You maintain more freedom. That's what it's all about. Freedom. I think they are a good step up for businesses, but also individuals. I think they're great. It's just preferences. Some people are going to prefer these approaches, but the family-based collaborative multisig is what I would suggest to consider first.
I always like to bring them up because I like to look into the mainstream. And currently, I think the mainstream isn't even doing any self-custody. like when we look in the mainstream of Bitcoin, not even factoring the people that don't even have Bitcoin right now, just figuring out like who all has Bitcoin. And I think the majority of it, and a lot of studies and a lot of like things kind of get behind that. Like most people still don't have self custody. It's like a smaller amount of people in self custody than like people that have it on exchange. I know a lot of friends of mine still have it in exchange, and I'm like, that's that's ridiculous. And then I look at the things that keep people from that, and it's just the education part, but it's also the reality of most people. Like if you have, it's the same thing that keeps people from getting into Bitcoin. It's the they don't have time to really look at what's going on with the financial system. And if they have time to get into Bitcoin, now they don't have time to research how to do proper self-custody. A book where everything is summarized is already a major step forward. And hopefully they can do it after that, but they still are feeling maybe alone, or they need someone. So like that's something like, okay, what is the most mainstream friendly approach, which also has kind of the most security in mind? So like what is the balance between really mainstream friendly to onboard a lot of people, but in the same time be as, because there are like the Bitcoin advisory out there that does 2 out of 3 where 2 keys are not with them. But I'm like, okay, I don't like that. That's really interesting. That self custody and you don't have the majority of the keys. That I don't like. I don't like any setups where I don't have the majority of the keys. I would never recommend that, but maybe in some cases it's a good setup for them. But in a majority of like, okay, it has to be easy, it has to be a structured process, there has to be some product around that, but it still has to be multisig, and it still has to be super easy to get in there. And I like a lot, what the Bitcoin way, what advisors like, what yourself are doing. I'm just asking like, okay, what is, because obviously if you do it yourself and you really educate yourself as good as possible, it's more secure and it's better for you. But I'm also thinking like, what will be the mainstream doing? And I'm really fearful that the mainstream is just keeping it on exchange. You get what I'm trying to say? Like, obviously, if you want to do it yourself, like you have to educate yourself. You have to be fully self-sovereign. You have to do the family self-custody collaborative thing, or other like whatever you can do in maybe you don't have a family where you can do that, or you don't trust them, or like whatever. Like you can still do it yourself and do self-custody with multisig. But I want to close the gap from so many people having an exchange to moving them to multisig. And I'm thinking a lot what's the best way here. And obviously, Casa and Anjan, they are not even a sponsor here and stuff like that. But I'm thinking of what would be the best way to move as many people as possible, as easy as possible, to the most secure multisig self custody setup, where they actually also do it, because most people are like completely lazy, and then you cannot be lazy, and people still lose money also with multisig, like the less, because there's redundancy and stuff like that. But yeah, like so I just blot out like a lot of my thoughts now. But what are you thinking about moving the mainstream onto self custody? Maybe we don't even have to do that, because mainstream has to be on Lightning and maybe on Bitcoin banks. Maybe that's a future also.
Yeah, so that's a scaling question you're entering there at the end. Let's not go into that one. The self custody. So I get a lot of questions. What's the best Bitcoin hardware wallet, Rob? And that's an answer I really have to fundamentally refuse to give, because that's the beautiful thing of Bitcoin. I mean, my stack is different than yours. Everyone's stack is different. Everyone's background is different. Everyone's preferences, risk profile, every factor that is relevant here is different for everyone. So there really is no one size fits all solution. I personally have a very strong preference for a specific hardware wallet. And I'm not going to name it this time because I always get these, you're an official reseller. I'm not sponsored by anyone, anything. Besides hardware and software agnostic. And I think that's just our approach and these principles. I think we look at your specific situation and this hardware is a great fit for you. What's your platform? You're on a laptop, you're on mobile. What do you want to do going forward? What is your transaction frequency? What's the amount you store? And then we go from there, and every solution that we implement is tailor fit. That's the signature service. It takes many different shapes and sizes. That being said, I do also want to pick up on the word easy you dropped there. That is so important. It has to be easy. Multisig has been in the protocol for so long. We could do it for a while, but it has to be easy. And now, as I said, with the changes on protocol, hardware, software, it has become easier, and it should become even easier. There's a lot of hardware, firmware, app layer improvements still possible. But Blue Wallet, I'll drop a name here, not hardware, but software name. I think they are beautiful because it is so simple. It is you got your wallet and you got your two buttons, send, receive. Receive, you got your address, send, you scan a QR code, boom. And there's a lot of Bitcoin wallets out there that have a lot of very cool features, but a lot of these things don't matter to most people. And I think that's a beautiful way to learn. Make it easy. Make the first experience very easy of self-custody, right? You get it off an exchange, and if people can just scan a QR code, people know scanning QR codes from the Fiat system by now, or just in general. So that approach to start out with self-custody, air gaps, I guess, are the beautiful thing here, right? They increase not only your security, but also your usability. Usually that's the trade-off, that you increase your security, but you lose some usability, you increase complexity. And that's not always the case. For example, when jumping to air-gap, there's USB-based devices. When you use a hardware wallet USB-based and you go to an air-gapped one, you have increased your security by eliminating the USB platform, which is inherently insecure, and also increased your usability. You have no more buttons to press, plug in cables. So that's, I think, what we should strive for, to also increase security whilst increasing usability. And we've implemented setups from people who are on obnoxious hardware wallets, Ledger, and the basic multisig setup with one hotkey is more usable than a single janky button USB-based device. So yeah, I think we should strive to implement both, and self-custody. It should be easy. It should be a nice experience and not scary. It's scary for a lot of people. And air gaps are a beautiful way, I think. Even just starting out with multisig, and then also starting out with single sig, and then to enter multisig, the air gaps, the QR based. I'm on repeat here. I mean, I truly love it. Can you feel it? I truly love it. It's beautiful. That's I think the way here, even with single, with multi. Yeah.
I love how you, and I fully agree, before you even say that, I fully agree with the level one, as you said here on the tweet, hot storage on a closed source shitcoin wallet like Ledger, and closed source and shitcoin wallet. I fully agree here. I mean, many of the wallets do also accept other altcoins. I don't know. Is there any true? true Bitcoin only wallet? Like I don't even know about that. But yeah, they're closed
Definitely.
source, and yeah, it's really bad with Ledger. It unfortunately was my first wallet, and I got rid of it like I think 2 years ago, something like that. It still sits somewhere, but there's nothing on there. But yeah, it's I do agree with that. They kind of made the wrong moves in the market. It could have been a great choice, but they had a lot of the market share, and they still have, I think, but
Still
I
have.
never recommend them.
Still have, yeah. It's a bit of a pity that they have fumbled the bag in a major way, but they still hold. It's some network effect, I guess, when you get some brand recognition out there. Um, yeah, I burned mine ritually.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, that was just my principle. Um, yeah, I mean, but it's a. Let me step on some toes here, perhaps, because shitting on Ledger is very popular, right? And of course, I like to shit on Ledger, but it's a great. Been. It's been. I was gonna say it is a great tool to start out. It's been a great tool. They have onboarded so many people into self custody, right? I mean, you were for me. I have a ledger that was also applicable to me. So let me just phrase it about me here. But um, you have to relentlessly innovate. You have to focus on the things that are important, and that's not shitcoins. There's many exchanges following that path. Coinbase, who have that brand recognition and that network effect, I guess, to some extent. But it's beautiful to see the many different options out there with hardware wallets, with software, and you can configure whatever tickles your pickle. I mean, multisig is how millionaires secure their Bitcoin. But starting out with a simple, I mean, you can grab a Jade, but it's a very budget option, or a 3D printed seed signer, which could be even cheaper. Um, so there's so many different options out there, but ease of use really requires more attention. Still, that what we have to focus on, that to make the first self custody experience when people are getting their Bitcoin off exchange into self custody easy and nice, and that's that they like it. And that's my approach also here, to apply that same with multisig, that you enter multisig and you're like, oh, that's not too bad. Okay, I can just do, okay, well, because the full setup takes a while, but then actually using it, and that's what we should strive for, that managing your precious freedom to transact and store value. It shouldn't always be with these cold storage sweats, right? We all know the cold storage sweat, making the first transaction, that can be very scary, and also moving wallets. So yeah, it should be, we should hammer it on it being easy. We have tons of very secure options out there. Security is not the main issue here. We should really make it more, focus more on usability.
What do you think about time locking keys to make it less likely that you could lose access, like having a key that's activated after 6 months or 12 months of inactivity and stuff, something like that?
I'm glad you added that specification there, because time lock used to be to lock down a UTXO, some Bitcoin, where you can't spend it for a year, full stop. But now you have these expanding and decaying multi-sig configurations, and Liana's really leading the charge here, that you can build a 2 or 3 multi-sig and it falls back down into lesser keys, that down the road you only need one key. to sign, or it expands, new keys become active. I think that is beautiful. It's a pity that it's so rare that not a lot of hardware wallets have implemented it. But various ones are actively working on it. I think it's going to become more and more standardized. It's also protocol based. The output descriptors, they grow significantly in size, but to by default have a multisig wallet and not be scared, you only really need to hold one key, because if you lose the others and your output descriptor, it just enables so much more peace of mind and confidence. And that's really, I use this way too much in a sales pitch, so here I go. The main product is not hardware wallets nor consultancy, but the peace of mind at the end of the road. And it means different things to different people. But the expanding and decaying multisigs, where keys become active or lose activity, that is so beautiful in the backup sense. That, okay, something can go wrong, and I only need to hold one key. Yeah, Liana's doing beautiful things there. Would love to see some mobile implementation. I think it's going to be very popular because of that confidence that it gives. Introducing a backup key, two of three multisigs, so you have three keys, and then after a year, a fourth key becomes active if you haven't made a transaction, and it's just rolling, right? If every time you make a transaction, you extend that time lock. So much things are possible here. Again, there's no one size fits all solution, but let's look at your situation. What's good for you? What's your spending frequency? What's your backup solution look like? And these time locked multi-sigs, I think, are going to be very popular. They should be. Beautiful. Again, huge fan.
When is actually your book coming out, or is it already out? The Bitcoin security?
Not out. Should be Q3 this year. But yeah, I mean, I'm coming from software, and software deadlines are not met. They just aren't met. I haven't seen many software deadlines met. So I will try to change that when writing this to actually meet that deadline. Yeah, I think also it's going to be a big effort in writing it in public also. Not completely open source, but to enable attacks on it. That's how you build resilience. To write the different chapters in public, and people can criticize it and add to it. That's going to be a very important part of it, and that might delay it. I really want to get this right. I think it's so valuable. The how part of, besides the why, as we said in the beginning.
Absolutely. Do you have do you focus any time on security outside of the self-custody setup itself, like training for phishing attacks, or like training, or like securing your digital footprint a little bit more, like privacy, like all those things, or like more in the direction of cybersecurity and less of like Bitcoin securing?
Definitely, because that is very relevant. A popular product, I can grab it, is the Ubico, the hardware authentication keys, where you have two-factor authentication, not by these one-time passwords, by definitely not Google Authenticator, but by a hardware key, so that you have a more durable, robust two-factor authentication setup for the accounts that are somewhat critical. VPN, running your own node. It's not just about security. Privacy is very related to that. And it gets broadly besides that, physical security of your property. When you are securing significant amounts, it's not just cybersecurity you should be concerned about. Uh, Physical security also becomes relevant at some stage. Again, it's about worries. What do you worry about? That BitSaga assists to solve, so you can live in confidence with your self custody. But not everything. People aren't aware of many of the possible attacks that are out there, right? Side channel attacks. Ooh, there's some exotic, dangerous people. Never heard of them. Side channel attacks out there that you really got to put your tinfoil hat on to. Well, that's not going to happen to me. But cyber and physical security, security overall, is a very broad aspect, and also it's a process. It's not an end point you achieve like green check mark. Now I am secure. Technology keeps evolving. The value of your asset keeps going up. Bitcoin will keep going up. You'll have to keep improving your security. Physical, wide, cyber, specifically your Bitcoin. Be aware of your privacy. So yeah, there's a lot to it. We take a lot into account. Yeah, it can get very advanced, and at some point we partner with cybersecurity firms that do individual screenings, because it gets very specialized, and BitSaga is really focused on the Bitcoin security, basic cybersecurity, cloud, VPN, home networking, big one also that we help with. People's home network are trash with relation to security. All these IoT devices, it's horrible. People love to turn on their lights or whatever, manage it from their phone, and these are security holes often. Set up a guest network. Throw these janky, insecure IoT devices on your guest network and split it off, is the main message there. So, yeah, security is very broad, and it depends on the setup, the client, the what can be improved. There's always something to improve. Not every improvement, not necessary to set up physical cameras with on location backups everywhere. In some cases, in a lot of cases, that's just ridiculous. So there's no one size fits all approach here. It's depending on the situation, but it's very wide. Security, it's very wide.
Absolutely. And I think that's where also we kind of close maybe the loop to where Bitcoin security is also going with, like, there's different people that want different setups and different security aspects of it. And there will be probably in the future be a wide variety of different offerings, services, products, whatever. And that's what's kind of I'm hoping. I'm just hoping that most of the products and services focus on self-custody. But that's just my hope and my effort into this community to bring as many people on self-custody. If you have a decent amount of Bitcoin, also on multi-signature. I love that you're a multisig maxi. I also am one, and I discovered multisig very late. Basically last year, I discovered it very late. I was already almost 4 years into Bitcoin and didn't have multi-signature, and I had self-custody from day one. Literally bought 1 day after I bought my first Bitcoin on Coinbase, obviously. I bought then a Ledger. So the two companies that I now avoid heavily and just don't touch, I used in the beginning. So also, like, kudos to them. Like, they are onboarding a lot of people. They are also doing a lot for the Bitcoin. So, like, that's what you're saying, is that's really important also. But yeah, we kind of have to move towards multi-signature self-custody, and just it's a journey of taking security and self-responsibility to a whole nother level. Which brings me maybe to my last question today. What do you think will this do to our society, if at all, something, if we now have an asset where you can be your own bank and you can be completely self-sovereign, and you now have the possibility to kind of be outside of any system and still function, where we don't have a mom or dad be not our literally parents of like talking about the state and the banks kind of dealing above us and like, oh yeah, like if your money gets stolen, you have some insurances. If you forget your password, no worries, verify yourself on the banking app, you get your access again. And like that kind of very protected space to more a self-sovereign space with more self-sovereign world. Do you think we will get there, and what will that change, or are we more moving towards this and different asset but same ecosystem?
Yeah, I love that question. Let's go broad here. I believe in, I've got a toolkit here that's got a quote that comes to mind by Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility. And I believe that's what Bitcoin is giving us: freedom and responsibility. And we've never in history had the amount of freedom that we can have on a Bitcoin standard. And I think that's going to also, by some measure, like never before seen, increase the responsibility on an individual level that we have to take. And that will enable like the low time preference thinking. I think it all weaves together into a new state of mind of freedom, self-custody, low time preference thinking. You can't have all the benefits without the responsibilities. And I think that's it's going to empower us more, and value what we have. Self custody. I think the low time preference thinking. It's going to be such a cultural shift. Maybe even the greatest gift that Bitcoin is going to give us on a cultural aspect, and then it'll naturally fit in with the responsibilities that we have to take if you want to self custody this freedom technology properly. So I think it'll be part of a broader awakening to do it properly. Right now, because we haven't had it before, it might sound heavy that there is no one like a parent to take care of you, but I think it connects really well with the more durable approach of the sovereign individual. Yeah.
I also think so, and we need that future, and I do hope so that we get there. I have a question that I ask each and every one of my guests, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Besides Bitcoin, I love to tie. It's difficult not to tie it to Bitcoin again. I think having it all and not wanting anything. Like the quote that comes to mind by Tyler Durden from the Fight Club. You're not your fucking cockies. Things you own end up owning you. Because I strive to be successful and with relation to Bitcoin, have it all. But the true lesson, the most valuable insight perhaps can be that the most valuable thing is our time and our loved ones. And I just became a father, got a daughter of 2 months, so I might be more awakened to that aspect, that love, family, friends. It's such a cliche, but in the most important times, you can really feel it to be true, that these are the things that really matter and should never be forgotten, whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah.
I love that family and friends, and that part comes so often in this part of the podcast. I think it really shines on what the Bitcoin community is focusing on, and I just love that. Really cool. We have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is, and your question is an very interesting one. What is the biggest thing that Bitcoin doesn't fix?
Biggest thing Bitcoin does not fix. That's very hard. There's a lot of things it affects. Nothing really comes to mind, honestly. Biggest thing that Bitcoin doesn't fix.
I mean, nothing would also be a great answer, because Bitcoin fixes everything. If you believe that, so, some believe that in the Bitcoin community, some don't do.
I do believe it affects most things, even like socially. I'm gonna have to go with that it does affect, maybe not fix, but affect positively. I'm one of those believers that it does affect everything, because it is so fundamental to us. Freedom. That's what it's about, and I do believe that.
I fully agree. I think it's money touches almost everything, or is part of actually everything. In most senses, like not everything, but almost everything. If you do anything, you kind of have to get some. There's always something trading going on. Like if you go somewhere, if you do something, there is always a form of your physical energy going on, your time energy going on, but most of the time also your financial energy. And this is so fundamental to us that if you exchange that financial energy and how it fundamentally works, it will affect you also, your physical energy, your mental capacity and stuff like that. So I do subscribe to that also. But yeah, like it doesn't fix everything, but it affects almost everything. Maybe that's a good way to get it to. All right. Really cool. Thank you so much, Rob, for being on the show. Before I let you go, where can people find you and ask you questions?
Main point is the website, bitsaga.be. And on X, of course, Bitsaga Rob being the main Bitcoiner channel. But most definitely, the main channel is the website, bitsaga.be.
Thank you so much, Rob, for being on. Thank you so much for taking the time. Also, thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye bye.